We are surrounded by borders, all kinds of borders, but we have borders within us too. I'm an Iranian, Canadian, vegetarian, agnostic, pharmacist, come HIV activist, coming from Thailand, now living in France. But the greatest things in my life have happened when I've crossed borders, all kinds of borders, to be rewarded with growth and expansion. Long time ago when I first started traveling, and actually Paris was the first place I came on my own. At first I was interested in the differences. You know, I tried every kind of food. I bought t-shirts with beer logos on them. I went to mosques and churches and temples and synagogues. But the more I traveled, the more I realized that we have so much in common. Those differences dissolved, and instead I became interested in the rituals and the beliefs and in the practices that unite us all together. There's a place in Southeast Asia called the Golden Triangle. It actually used to be an opium hotspot, but now it's replaced by tourist buses, where you can visit the junction of Thai, Myanmar, and Lao borders. I was rather disappointed, to be honest. And if you have this on your plan for this summer, you may want to do something else. But they'll tell you, here's Myanmar, here's Lao, here's Thailand. Wow. But to me, it all looked the same. Green rolling hills, as far as the eye could see, interspersed with life-giving rivers. There were no distinctive features that separated one bit of land from the next one, that made one Thailand and one might be Myanmar. To the planet, it's all the same. The Earth is round. There are no borders. There are no boundaries. We put up walls and barbed wire and electrical fences. We give people passports and national anthems and flags, but these are not real. 4 years ago, I left the boundaries of my professional as a pharmacist, the confines of my boundary, and went to pursue a dream in Thailand. I wanted to do development work in a warm, developing country. And I had a Canadian passport, which made traveling much easier. And like some of our colleagues, I also always get asked, but where are you really from? For 3 years, I worked with communities involved in the response to HIV. That is the network of transgender people, the network of gay men, the network of people who inject drugs, and for sex workers. We called ourselves the network hub of junkies, trannies, hookers, and fags. Now, I was a Canadian pharmacist coming to work in Bangkok, and I thought I had it all figured out, doing HIV prevention, health promotion, but what I thought I knew was really a fragment of how much I would learn from these community activists and how much I would grow by crossing over my boundaries and getting out of my comfort zone. For 3 years, I was pushed to my limits. I was made to redefine my boundaries, rethink my borders, relinquish them. But my work actually first started with youth, that is the young cohorts of these populations that I mentioned. But I also worked a lot with inspirational and brave young leaders living with HIV. Young people as program coordinators, as peer educators, as outreach workers, as advocates of policy, as agents of change. Young people are susceptible to HIV because, amongst a plethora of reasons, they are held back, they're marginalized, and they're disempowered. Young people are hardly involved in decision-making processes, or at least meaningfully involved in policies that affect them. In many countries, young people are generalized or they're just discredited. But nothing really happens to you when you go from 17 years and 12 months to 18. You don't suddenly go from a young person to an adult. Just like while driving from one country to the other, you don't suddenly change. Change is a continuum. Growth is continuous. Age is an artificial border. But to young people, it can make every difference. It can mean autonomy, power, rights, protection, access. Now, I've worked with young people that have seen so much, have experienced so much, have such a deep grasp of life, but they're held back by this barrier. Just think about it. The fact that this barrier, this border between adult and youth is different in different countries and for different contexts like marriage, voting, drinking, sex, consent, driving. Isn't this indication enough that this border is set arbitrarily? That perhaps, like geopolitical borders, the divide between youth and adult is set based on a variety of historical or cultural reasons that change over time and are not set in stone. Age may be just a number, but for young people, it's a great border. Ironically enough, though, when I was no longer considered youth, I was retired, but I stayed within the network of junkies, trannies, hookers, and fags, and my work concentrated mostly afterwards on transgender people and gay people within the HIV response. Gender may be just a checkbox on a form, but to many people, it's a great barrier. To me, transgender people represent what it truly means to be true to yourself, to define yourself the way that you feel, and not as somebody else dictates for you, and not the way that you should. But why are options so limited for transgender people? Why are they so deeply marginalized? I remember actually early on in Thailand, I was in a workshop with Thai NGOs, and we were translating this questionnaire from English to Thai. And I had gone ahead and I added an extra option under gender, and we had male, female, and I added transgender. And I thought I was being so progressive and cool. When the translation came back, there were 5. And when I asked them, they said, well, of course, there is masculine man, transgender, feminine woman, and masculine woman. That was just the normal for them. But what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be transgender? Transgender people get asked personal and unnecessary questions all the time about their genitalia, about their sex, about their sexuality. Society openly questions their mental stability because they don't fall within this binary border of man or woman. Gender can be a boundary that tries to reduce an aspect of the diversity of human identity to a boundary, to a dichotomy. So when you say to a young person, for example, oh, you're too young for this, or you think to yourself, nah, I'm too old for that. You're putting up a barrier. You're putting up a boundary. A hero of mine and an inspiration of mine, she's a world-famous transgender activist. Whenever she would get asked, are you a woman or a man? She would be like, we're not men or women, we're better than men or women. We are transgender, darling. So now you may be asking, what do transgender people and gay people and people living with HIV and sex workers and people who inject drugs have in common? These people came across all kinds of borders, internal and external borders. They crossed religious, linguistic, professional, personal borders. They communicated across time zones. They ate together. They came together. They cried together. They buried their colleagues. They celebrated together. They accomplished together. They put away their differences and they came together for their similarity. They were driven by their passion and their cause, which was HIV. Aren't we so much more productive when we come together for good causes instead of letting our differences tear us apart? Whether geopolitical, age, or gender, borders can separate us. Borders hold us back. Borders can divide and segregate. Crossing borders is not easy, but so much growth and potential can come when we do so. Thank you. Sciences Po.